Hi, I'm Randy Hollenbeck, and this is the Music Roundtable. Today on the show, we have singer-songwriter Dusty Grant.
How you doing today, man?
Terrified of all those things you hold inside that you can't even vocalize. The darkness lives in you. Black and blue from all the wars life put you through that you can't even get into. You just weather the storm. And when it finally becomes real, you get so numb that you can't feel the pins and needles in your skin.
I wanted to start out by getting into some of your background. When did you start playing guitar? What age?
Guitar, I dabbled in a little bit when I first, when I was about 19, 20, I started out playing in rock and, like rap rock bands and stuff. And I just dabbled on guitar, but I was always a front man. And then I had my wife and I had twins about 5 years ago. And it was to the point where I knew with my schedule with newborns and stuff, there was no way I could be in a band. So I figured if I want to continue playing music, I'm going to have to figure out a way to create myself. So I actually started playing acoustic guitar, took a few lessons and started practicing. Then I wrote, my brother-in-law kind of was prodding me to write something. So I wrote something solo and then kind of decided to go at it from there. But yeah, so I've only been playing guitar for around seriously for, 5, 6 years.
Could you name some of your musical influences?
I would say probably my biggest influence is Alice in Chains, Jerry Cantrell. I love Jerry Cantrell's solo music, and I love Alice in Chains. Obviously, they're probably my biggest influences. But I have a lot of influences from hip hop to pop to metal to country. I'd say Jerry Cantrell is probably my biggest influence, vocally, even guitar riff wise, how he put it. Just I've got a Jerry Cantrell combo amp at my house. Like I'm kind of a Jerry Cantrell fanboy. But a lot of the grunge singers from that era, Scott Weiland of Stone Temple Pilots. I'd never got into Soundgarden until I was older, strangely. But yeah, the grunge era is probably my biggest influence vocally.
You were playing in bands. Were they like cover bands or original bands before you went solo?
I've always done original music. The band started, I went to a party, and there were some brothers that had band gear set up. One of the guys was a drummer and one of the guys was a guitar player. And we were having a party and everybody was drinking some beers and stuff. So I just kind of picked up a mic and we played some songs that I knew. And we had a really good response to it. So we're like, we should just start a band. But then we started writing original music from there. And I've always been more into original music, even since I started out. But yeah, I do a few covers, but for the most part, I've always been more angling towards original music for sure.
And so now you're solo, but you do have like a band for your solo band.
I do, and that kind of came about strangely. I started solo in 2017, or I think my first show was in September of 2017 as a solo acoustic artist. And then this last year, I got hit up to play a show opening for Danielle Nicole. She's a Grammy-nominated blues artist. It was a pretty big opportunity. But the person that booked me was like, "Well, you're going to need a band. Do you have a band?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, I have a band." I did not have a band, but it was a really good paying gig, and it was a really awesome gig, and I was chomping at the bit to get out. So I reached out to some friends of mine that I've played with for a long time, and that I just kind of thought to myself, like, who if I could hand pick people from the Wichita music scene, people that I get along with really well, people that I admire, as musicians and friends and stuff like that. I'm just going to shoot the moon and try to get this guy, her, and this guy. And all four of them were not gigging at the time, and they all said, "Yeah, we can do it." So we started rehearsing as a band. We started having fun, and it really started to gel. And then we played the Danielle Nicole show, and some videos came out and stuff like that. And then from there on, I didn't really intend to have a band, but now I have a band. It just kind of took off from there. You know, people saw some videos, and we started getting booked on some bigger gigs this year, which was fantastic. It really did happen by accident, though. I just gambled. I was like, "Yep, I have a band. Let's go."
When the pandemic hit and everything was shut down for over that year with live music and everything, what did you do during that year?
I spent a lot of that time. It hurt me a lot. I was kind of on a run where I was starting to get a lot more bookings, and I was starting to build a little bit of a name for myself. And I think I ended up canceling 30 gigs or something like that. And for an independent artist like me, I don't have a ton of time, so that booking is a tedious process, and it takes a lot of work. So to lose those shows was a heartbreaker. But I got into podcasting actually. I joined a couple podcasts with a friend of mine. I actually started my own podcast and started having musicians and other artists. And I'm a big fan of mixed martial arts, and I'm a martial artist myself. So I started having fighters on. And I think I did 35 episodes or something like that during the pandemic. But I used the time to write and play and promote. I had a pretty solid catalog of music out already that I got busy when I was playing a lot of those shows, so that they didn't get adequately promoted. So I spent a little bit of time like that, polishing up my social media game, my promotion game, working on building my numbers, and just trying to go at it from that angle. I'm the type of guy where no matter what, I want to be working on it because I love it. So it makes no difference to me what happens. I mean, obviously the stage is the reason I do it, but I love all the other aspects of it too. So it just forced me to think a little differently, and I started building my network a little more. Learning some graphic design, learning some video editing. Trying to do things to where I don't have to outsource everything I do all the time. It's a way to save money. It gives me creative control. So I feel like I've made very productive use of the time, because I did expand my network significantly doing the podcast. And I plan to probably do some more podcast episodes eventually when things slow down. I tabled the podcast, but I'm definitely not retiring it for good. Like, I still get the itch, because I really did like interviewing people. And I think it was weird. I had a pretty good chemistry between the fighters and the independent artists, because a lot of the fighters are coming up the same way. They're like independent artists too. They're having to take some tough gigs and some tough fights and some short notice stuff, and the stuff that they go through psychologically to prepare is a lot. You have this one opportunity. You have to shine. If you get a big opportunity, you have to be ready, and it's nerve wracking, and it's scary, and it's all, and like to hear fighters talk about it, and then you hear artists talk about it, like, man, we actually have a pretty cool dynamic on this show. But I'll probably go back to it. I think I'll do it. I think I'll do some more episodes. I won't do it as regularly as I was, because I'm hoping that I can continue to book shows. But when I get downtime, I'd definitely like to do some more of that for sure.
Since live music has come back, have you played any shows since then, since the lockdown was lifted? And did you notice like there was a different energy in the crowd?
Definitely. The first show back, I played one show during the pandemic. It was called the COVID concert series. It was in a beautiful venue here in Wichita, the Crown Uptown Theater, but it was all socially distanced and kind of weird. But it was great to get on stage and play and be around a crowd. But then the pandemic lifted, and I had that show with Danielle Nicole, and then we got a sweet opportunity to open for Daughtry. We got to open for Candlebox. I got to open for Arthur Gunn from American Idol solo. And I had a really awesome run of shows, and I did notice every show that I did, people are so much more enthusiastic. They're loving the music so much more. People are, when you play solo acoustic gigs, a lot of times there's a ton of chatter and talking, that not everybody's just sitting there hanging on every word that you say in a bar on a Saturday night. You're playing solo gigs, man. It is what it is. Sometimes it's great. Sometimes nobody's listening and you're just up there as background noise and whatever it might be. But I did notice a lot more people were into it. They could see it. They could feel it. And I could feel it when I was playing. I could feel the energy was different. I felt like the people that were listening were a lot more emotionally invested in the music. And I think maybe a lot of people realized or learned to appreciate live music a little more, because I think when there's a show every night and life just goes on and you take them for granted, you don't want to go to but now I'm even me, when I see an opportunity to go to a show, I'm like, let's go. I don't care if we got to take the kids. I don't care. I've been going to a lot more shows than I normally go to. And so, yeah, I've definitely noticed a difference in the energy. It's been really awesome this year. This year was I didn't play as many shows as I'm used to playing, but the shows I did play were really awesome. And I think we've got one more. We've got one more on November 5th, and then I think we're going to be done for the year unless something else pops up.
I think it stands to reason I'm not falling anymore. I've grabbed my demons by the throat, now I'm showing them the door. And the story writes itself. No more hiding in this shell. And this fire that's burning inside, it's burning for you. You know I do it for you. You know I do it for you.
You released Trapped Here in January 2019, and you have 2 songs on there, All Crashed Down and All the Good Times. Now, are those meant to represent a story? Like I saw on your YouTube channel that you had the videos, and it seemed like a part 1 and 2.
Yeah, done so much, and All Crashed Down were definitely a story. It was strange how that came about too, because I had given the video, Shattered Glass Films, who I worked with, I gave them the recording to All Crashed Down, and I said, hey, would you guys like to do a video? We met, and it was kind of about a loss, and about how things in life can hit you like right away, and it makes you reevaluate your whole psychology of everything that you do. So I recorded that tune. I showed it to them. They're like, yes, let's do it. And in the meantime, before our shoot for that, I had gone in and recorded Done So Much too. So I jokingly walked into the first day of the video shoot with that mix in my hand. And I said, hey guys, I just recorded another one. Should we do a video for this one instead today? And then they listened to the track and they'd be interested in doing like a 2-part series for this. And I was like, absolutely, I'm in, and it was a really cool collaboration, and we had a really cool story. But yeah, those songs were, all the Trapped Here songs were going through probably, the darkest time in my life. So a lot of those songs, even playing them sometimes is painful for me. But I love them, I'm really proud of them. And I'm really proud of that EP, because it was a time in my life that I can take a snapshot and be like, man, look how far you've come. Look, you've climbed out of the hole. And I still lean towards writing depressing and dark stuff. I don't know why. But for the most part, I'm a much happier guy these days than I was when I was writing Trapped Here and stuff like that. I think Trapped Here was those songs like All Crashed Down and All the Good Times and all the, I think I was afraid to talk about how I felt back then or something. It was, the macho thing or whatever it was, or I wasn't ready to explore those feelings. And it had to pour out of me somehow. And I feel like maybe, writing all those songs was a constructive way for me to deal with some of that anger and some of that depression and some of that rage and some of that stuff. So yeah, definitely. Those are all the most of what I write is based on, personal experience. I do have a couple things I'm working on that are going to be a little more out of the box, but for the most part, I write from personal experience, and I don't know why I just always go dark most of the time.
On that album, by writing all those songs and releasing them, did that bring you some kind of closure to that time?
Yeah, it did. I think it was more for me personally as an artist and a musician, and I think that EP made me realize, like, yes, you love this, you've been doing it for 20 years now. This is a real, I guess I have that imposter syndrome thing sometimes. It's like, do I belong doing this, or am I just wasting my time because no one cares about this and blah? Because, artists go through that a lot, especially when you're starting out. But I think it was a validation for me. And man, I'm going through this. Were you going through this when you wrote this? And I'm like, weirdly, yes, I was. It's a very similar situation. And they're like, man, it's really depressing to listen to it, but also at the same time, it's nice to know that I'm not alone. There's other people that feel this way. And I really didn't try to sound like anything, or I wasn't going for anything specific. It was just, I picked up my guitar and wrote those songs, and that's what I wrote. And then I took them to a really good producer who really helped them shine, and it is what it is now. It did provide me some closure, and it did provide me with a little bit of validation. I didn't get rich off of it by any stretch of the imagination, but I did notice that people were listening, and the people that were listening, it seemed to really connect with them. So yeah, and I felt, when you put songs out there like that, you feel like this vulnerability almost, in a way. You're like, are people gonna, is this gonna hit home with anybody, or am I just gonna sound like a crazy guy? But it did definitely. I wasn't as nervous when I started noticing that the people that were hearing it, it was connecting with them in that way, in a meaningful way. And for me, I don't have any delusions of grandeur that I'm going to be some big millionaire artist. I mean, I'm well aware of how difficult it is to get to that point, but it's why I make music. And, for me to be able to open up about how I felt, and to have people, receive that with open arms. Yeah, it was good. It's great closure, man, really.
The next song you released was in September. It was Up From Here. So I with with us just talking about this, it sounds perfect for the next song to be Up From Here. Where do I go? It's all going up from here.
Yeah, and it really was this thing where when I was writing it, I came up with the idea for that song. Me and my buddy Sprout the Anti-Hero, he's out of Tulsa. We had just finished. I think we had done an 8 or 10 day run, and it was the first time I'd ever left and gone on the road and played shows night after night. I'd done one or two or three at a time, a lot, frequently, but I'd never done like an extended run. And we booked it all ourselves, promoted it all ourselves, did all that, and you're just dog tired at the end of it. And I was sleeping on a air mattress on somebody's floor, and I woke up at like 7 in the morning. I'm like, man, it cannot. I'm like, the way I feel right now, because we were partying and all that. I'm like, the way I feel, how rough I'm feeling right now. I'm like, there's no way, like, that the next time I do this, that it's going to be better. And I started thinking about how I felt. I pried my eyes open, they were adorned with a blood red hue. Like, you look in the mirror and your eyes are just blood red. You're like, oh my God, your hand's sore because you haven't played that much guitar. And the idea kind of snowballed from there. And that song has been, like, for me, in comparison to my other songs, that song is by far the most positive and, like, a little bit motivating. I think people were surprised to hear me come out with something a little more optimistic.
You just released for you in May. Could we get into the story behind that song?
That's a song I wrote for my wife. It's the cliche love song. It's just a song that she stood by me through some really hard stuff, and I kind of wanted to pay tribute to that and show some appreciation for that, and let her know that I will do the same when the time comes for her, because she's walked with me through hell a little bit, for a few years there. And, she's the best thing that's ever happened to me. So it was like, I had a cool sounding riff, and it kind of felt different than my other stuff, and then I took it down to Dawson, and he's like, we could still do it, but we could kind of darken it up a little bit and I'm like, let's go, there's nothing real complicated about that one. It was a love song, and it was a way to, kind of tell my wife thank you, and let her know that I'll reciprocate when the time comes.
Do you have any shows coming up in the future?
Yes, sir. Next Friday is our last show of the year. We're opening I guess we're direct support for Blacktop Mojo. They're a rock band out of Texas. I've been looking at their stuff and really getting into their music lately. And then my friends in Rise Again are opening the show. So it's at a beautiful venue here in Wichita called Temple Live. And I think it's like the fourth or fifth big act that we've had a chance to open for. So it'll be a great way to, kind of cap the year off. And that'll be the last one. I'm just now getting into conversations to start booking 2022, but yeah, November 5th will be our last one of the year, the way it's looking, unless someone needs a short notice or something happens. But yeah, it looks like that'll be our last one of the year.
Where can we get a hold of you at? Facebook, Twitter, Instagram?
Everywhere. Yeah. I've got my website, www.dustygrant.com. You can find me on Facebook. You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Amazon, Spotify, YouTube. Pretty much, if there's a social media platform out there, I'm on it. The only one I don't mess around with much is Snapchat. But you can always find me. Just search Dusty Grant or search at Dusty Grant 57. You'll be able to find me. I should be the first guy to pop up.
Do you have anything else to add?
I just appreciate the opportunity, man. It's good to sit down and talk to you. I can talk. Musicians can talk about music for hours and hours a day. So it's always cool to get to connect with other music lovers and kind of tell your story. Guys like me don't get that many opportunities to do that. So I appreciate you giving me the opportunity and the platform to get the